was very concerned. I think a lot of commentators, such as yourself as well, were concerned that, we're not just choosing the Tory leader in this race, we're also choosing the British Prime Minister. And to have such a novel experiment, which sounds good that you can change your vote if new information is presented, and that's a good thing in theory. People can vote early, and then some great scandal, for example, might have broken about one of the candidates, and the ability to change your vote, therefore, would have a purpose. But you don't really want to introduce a sort of an innovative scheme such as this, and which you can't, people who vote in local or general elections, that's not something available to them. So I think it was needed to be properly road tested before it was introduced in a contest such as this, and that hadn't been done. So I welcome the decision to delay ballot papers a little bit, because everyone involved, including the candidates themselves, must have confidence that this process is robust and that the candidate who won really did won, and that the contest wasn't tampered with in any way.
I suppose it might be a slight advantage in the grand scheme of democratic accountability that the voting is now not likely to take place in the majority, at least, until the start of next week, when people get their ballots, perhaps over this weekend. Is more scrutiny time a good thing? Of course, we are seeing both of these campaigns being really stress-tested. Debates, hustings, and indeed policy really being put through the grinder.
Yeah, well, Tom, when I was running Conservative Home quite a few years ago now, older than I wish sometimes, remembering these things, but Michael Howard tried to take away, when he was party leader, he tried to take away the vote from party members. And he thought that just MPs should decide. And when we were at Conservative Home, we fought a campaign to defeat that, because we thought members who knock on doors, stuff envelopes for the party, they should have a say in deciding who leads their party. But part of the idea of having members involved as well as MPs was to ensure that there was a long process, a little bit like a US primary election, so that it wasn't all done and dusted in a week or two, which is often happens when MPs only decide. It certainly happens in Australia when they choose to change their leader. That actually, by involving members, you necessarily have to have a few weeks of contest, so that we can really see candidates perform or not perform over an extended period. So I like the way the Tory party chooses its leader. It's not perfect, but the candidates have to have the confidence of a reasonable number of MPs, and then they're tested in the country on TV in multiple formats. And I think that leads to a more informed and robust process, because Theresa May famously, of course, didn't have that second round process. And when she became Prime Minister, Andrea Leadsom withdrew from the process. I wonder if we'd had that second round process and Theresa May had been tested in front of members in television and various formats, perhaps we wouldn't have been so quick to go for that 2017 election, because Theresa May clearly wasn't ready for that prime time contest, and we might have discovered that if she'd been tested earlier.
Really, really interesting counterfactual there. I suppose it's interesting looking as well at these candidates. To some extent, Liz Truss is doing the opposite journey that Theresa May took during the 2017 election, going from someone who was more robotic to actually being someone who's a more impressive performer the more we've seen of her. Really interesting stuff. Let's keep our eyes peeled on these future hustings. There are still 10 of them, 10 to go around the country. But for now, Tim Montgomerie, thank you for joining us this morning.